A hearing for the resentencing of convicted killers Eric and Lyle Menendez will take place next week. A Los Angeles judge has cleared the way for the proceedings to move forward, despite the LA County District Attorney's attempt to stop it. The brothers were convicted of murdering their parents more than 35 years ago. The relatives say that they have admitted guilt and apologized.
There's no way for us to predict how next week is going to go. We have great faith in the system. We have great faith that justice is going to prevail. We have great faith that this judge is acting based on the law. So that gives us hope because they've certainly earned it.
With me is former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. Really appreciate your time, Nima. The Menendez brothers are currently sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, and they could be resentenced to life with the possibility of parole, and that means that they could be immediately eligible for parole. What are the chances that you see of that actually happening?
Isabel, I think the chances are good, and this is why. Yesterday's hearing was an important procedural hurdle because Nathan Hochman, the current district attorney's predecessor, George Gascon, initiated resentencing. And under California law, it's not something the defense can do. A prosecutor or a judge has to initiate that resentencing request. Well, when Hochman took over, he tried to rescind or pull back that request. And the judge says, whoa, that's too late. The train has already left the station. So next week, we're actually going to get into the substance of the resentencing. And like you said, if they get sentenced to something like 50 to life, which is what George Gascon recommended, the brothers would be immediately eligible for parole because they're youthful offenders. And under California law, if you serve half your sentence or 25 years, you're up for parole. And of course, the brothers have been in for 35 years. And Governor Newsroom has already started that parole process by asking an expert whether the brothers pose an unreasonable risk to the public. So there's a very real possibility that Eric and Lyle Menendez are before the parole board in a matter of months.
Yeah, this can all unfold very quickly here. The LA County District Attorney issued a statement after the hearing, which reads in part, until the Menendez brothers finally come clean with all their lies of self-defense, suborning, and attempting to suborn perjury, they are not rehabilitated and pose an unreasonable risk of danger to the public safety. Now, their family says that's not true. What do you make of this push and pull between the DA, his predecessor, and the Menendez family?
Nathan Hochman came out pretty aggressively, both outside the courtroom at a press conference and then his deputy yesterday inside the courtroom, saying that the brothers have not accepted responsibility because they lied about how the murders happened, saying that first it was a mob hit and then that their father, Jose, was sexually assaulting one of their girlfriends, and how the story has changed over time. I think the challenge is Nathan Hochman hasn't met directly with Eric and Lyle Menendez recently to get their position. Obviously, they're well into their 50s now, and the stories that he's talking about were when they were much younger, shortly after the murders and during the first and second trial. What's also unique about this case, Isabel, is you rarely have the family members of the victims. And in this case, almost all the family members, except for one notable exception, that want the criminal defendants released. And that's what you have here. And that's why it's such a powerful case. Not to mention the really overwhelming support that the brothers have after the Netflix series Monsters, which really shined a light on the sexual abuse that they suffered at the hands of their father. And their mother either turned a blind eye or was complicit to it.
Right, and let's talk about another case now that has gripped America, Luigi Mangione, the man accused of killing United Healthcare's CEO last year. Now, his lawyers are asking a federal judge to block the Justice Department from seeking the death penalty. Nima, how do you see this playing out?
I think it's going to be tough, but here's another case where you have someone accused of murder, not convicted of murder like the Menendez brothers, but someone who's been charged with murder that has a lot of public support. So when you're talking about the defense that his lawyers are raising here, it's really a political prosecution or a selective prosecution defense, because the feds came in and they charged him with murder on top of state prosecutors, and they're seeking the death penalty. Isabel, that rarely happens where you have parallel or subsequent state and federal prosecutions. In fact, the DOJ has an internal policy where they say, you know what, unless there's a compelling federal interest that isn't vindicated in the state case, we're not going to get involved. That's why, aside from George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery, you normally don't see this. But obviously, This is a new DOJ, and what they're doing is in blue states like New York, where they don't have the death penalty, you're going to see the feds step in more and make these types of charges and bring death penalty cases, capital cases. So what the defense has to do to prove that political prosecution is to show that it was motivated for a constitutionally prohibited reason. That is a very hard burden or hurdle for the defense to meet. We saw Donald Trump raise it unsuccessfully. We saw Hunter Biden raise it unsuccessfully. Unless the prosecution by the feds was motivated by race, religion, national origin, something like that, I don't think they're going to be able to get the death penalty off the table in that case.
Yeah, and to your point, an unusual level of interest on the part of the federal government in this case. I want to move on to Brian Kohberger. He's accused of stabbing 4 Idaho college students back in 2022. We're expecting a decision on what evidence can or cannot be used, including his upcoming trial. If you can keep it short here, Nima, how do you see this playing out? What do you see happening here?
Well, the defense has a lot that they need to exclude, and the key evidence here, of course, is the DNA on the knife sheath that was found at the scene. They're admitting that it was Kohberger's DNA, and they're going to argue that it was transferred or planted. But there's a lot of other evidence that's potentially problematic, including surviving roommate Dylan Mortensen, who described him having bushy eyebrows, the infamous bathroom selfie the day after the murders, his Amazon purchase of the knife sheath and the knife, and of course the search history after the murders. So the defense has its hands full. They're going to try to exclude some of this evidence. If not, they have a real uphill battle when that trial starts in August.
A lot happening in the judicial system. Nima Rahmani, appreciate your time.
Thanks, Isabel.